82 on the 21st of April, 2025. I just spent 4 iterations of trying to do a 3-star alignment, and I could not image Messier 82 in the screen. So I picked a couple of different stars, and now I do have a good image. Messier 82 on the left over here was reasonably well centered, and Messier 81 on the right over here was just off the screen. The distance between the two is about 32 arc minutes. We're operating as usual at roughly, I think it's about 70x. I'm using El Quatro tonight because I want to continue the Rounders series. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of an idea of what effects exposure time has. It is sky dark. It's quite nice out. I'm going to go drop it back to about 0.5 seconds. And we will have a look at the Bode's galaxies, Messier 81 and 82, at this exposure time. I will set up, and it just says exposure success. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Oh, that's because the exposure time is too short. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is play with the histograms just a little bit. You can see we completely lost our view. I've got a bit of background light that I want to eliminate. Okay, there we go. Histograms are now reasonably set up. We're getting a bit of pixelation. I am using the ASI Live stacking program. I'm not really clear on that. I'm not seeing the name on the screen, but anyway, I'll tell you later. So let's quickly run through this before we start actually going through the Rounder series. I want to keep it down to about a half an hour as usual. That's my goal anyway. So I'm going to stop stacking right now. We're going to increase it to 1 second and notice the difference. Okay, now I've increased it up to 1 second exposure time. I'm not going to play with the histogram, and you get a view of a little more texture and detail in the galaxies. Once again, I'm going to boost it again, stopping the continuous flow. Go over to 2 seconds and see what we look like. At 2 seconds, we're definitely exceeding the view that you would probably get at the eyepiece through a 6-inch scope. There's our 2-second view. We'll now bump to 5. And at 5 seconds, we should begin to see the spiral arms of Messier 81. You can see the vague glow. You can see lots of texture in this dark region of nebulosity bisecting the core of Messier 82. And so finally, we are going to end up at the 10-second exposure time on a very nice night of seeing. So I may adjust the histogram a little bit after we get a full exposure here. We are viewing in continuous mode. And there we can see the spiral arms. We've now adjusted the histogram. You get the nice S shape of Messier 81, and you get a decent view of Messier 82 with a little bit of zoom. All right, so that is our view at probably something that's more like 90 to 100x. I may reframe the view because I just used the zoom function, so it should expand it. We now have our expanded view to encompass both the Bode galaxies in the screen. So tonight we are going to feature galaxies in the Rounders series. As soon as I can turn this light on, I can tell you what will be visible to us. We'll start with NGC2475, and we should end with NGC2549. We will have a look at NGC2474 first, just for a brief comparison for future use. And pause. And let's start with a low power view of NGC 2474. It's a 14th magnitude galaxy, fairly small, 0.7 by 0.7 arc minutes with an average surface brightness of 13. Nowhere to be seen pretty much on the screen, a magnitude 14. Let's do a little bit of a zoom and see if we can tease it out. Of course, we could still be having issues with the scope alignment. We won't know that until we've done a few observations. I am seeing nothing here of particular note except a few faint fuzzies right at this part of the screen here. So I'm going to have to make a comparison possibly to the skylive.com. Let's move on to our first of the rounder series for the evening. Oh yeah, I do believe that is a galaxy. For just a moment there, I thought I saw some spiralicity around it. Okay, may very well be our galaxy. Through a 17.5 scope in 1991, Steve Gottlieb said faint, very small, round, very small, bright core. Yep. Forms a double galaxy with NGC 2475, just 21 arc seconds northeast of center. It's located 2.6 arc minutes southwest of a magnitude 8.8 SAO 26594 star. And I do not even need to make a leap to our next study. So, NGC 2475 is the brighter of the two. So this is the brighter galaxy here. So apparently 2474 was this fainter galaxy here with a faint core. 2475 is in lengths, as was 2474. Magnitude 13.1, slightly larger, 0.8 by 0.8 arc minutes with a slightly higher surface brightness of 12.5. Through a 17.5 scope in 1991, brighter of a double system with NGC 274, 21 arc seconds southwest between the centers, moderately bright, small round, very small bright core forms a striking pair with 2474. And once again, there is a relationship with this bright star right here, which is magnitude 8.8 SAO 26594. So the distance between these two is 2.3 arc minutes, and we are operating, let's see, now at 250 plus X, which is probably a very good choice for this pair of galaxies. As it turned out, NGC 2480 was actually located in Gemini way too far south, plus 23 degrees. We're only looking for things 4500 and north. This is 2488. You can see it right here on the screen in the past location. We will zoom in to 100% and maybe I'll have to center it, but there's our galaxy right there. I'll give you the data on 2488. It's at 8 hours, 1 minute, 45.8 seconds, plus 56 degrees, 33 minutes, and 13 seconds in lengths. Pretty bright, as you can tell, magnitude 12.4. Let me move this pointer aside. For that, it's kind of small for a 12.4 magnitude galaxy. At 1.4 by 0.8 arc minutes, kind of a football-shaped galaxy with an average surface brightness of 12.4 and a position angle of 100 degrees. Looks kind of edge-on to me. Very nice view. Through a 17.5 scope in 1991, it was faint, fairly small, elongated 3 to 2, west-northwest to east-southeast with a bright core. There is a UGC galaxy, 4164, 6 minutes to the north-northeast, which appeared faint, small, slightly elongated, and gradually increases to a bright core. So this may be the UGC here. Obviously, this one's brighter. There are actually several galaxies in the field. This is peppered with them. Anyway, unable to identify them, but we will go ahead and move on to our next NGC study in the Rounders series. All right, what we hope to see here is NGC 2497. It's in lengths, as the last two actually all four galaxies we've viewed so far, with the exception of the Geminid, are in lengths. NGC 2497 is at 8 hours, 2 minutes, and 11 seconds with a plus 56 degrees, 56 minute, 32 second declination. Its visual magnitude is 13.2 with a size 1.4 by 1.2. That's pretty typical of 13th magnitude galaxies. It's an average surface brightness of 13.6. Through that 17.5-inch scope, Steve Gottlieb said faint, extremely small, round, stellar nucleus stands out with direct vision, meaning basically the galaxy just pops right into the eye. At least you can locate it by eye. You don't have to do any eye movement or averted vision, which typically enhances the aperture scope by at least 50% and sometimes doubles it. Let's do our zoom on this and see if there is a galaxy here of note. There are actually several. Once again, when I go to 100 to 250x, this is the typical location we've seen them so far. This is the probable NGC2475 here, but look at this. This whole Lynx area is just, the cat swallowed a lot of extragalactic features. Well, here's a rather obvious galaxy on the screen. Tell me when to stop. Did you say there? This is NGC 2500 in Lynx, 8 hours, 1 minute, 53.1 second, plus 50 degrees, 44 minutes and 15 seconds. It's a magnitude 11.6 galaxy, 2.9 by 2.6 with an average surface brightness of 13.7. Through a 13.1-inch scope done in 1985, Steve describes it as moderately bright, fairly large, almost round, mottled, and with a weak concentration, and I would say, yeah, he pretty much nailed that. But we're going to zoom in and have a deeper look at this baby. Not much of a core region, pretty much face on, nebulosity, probably a galaxy of the C class. May have multiple spiral arms. I do believe that means it's got a uppercase B. I have to remember that. However, not quite as aesthetically pleasing unless you back off on the magnification. So we just dropped it down. Let's go to about 150x. That's a very good view of NGC 2500 in Lynx. Here we can see a very small but fairly high surface brightness galaxy right here next to this brighter star, which I'm sure Steve will mention. This is NGC 2505. Once again, it's in Lynx at 8 hours, 4 minutes, 6.8 seconds. Light ascension, plus 53 degrees, 32 minutes and 57 seconds. It's a magnitude 13.2 galaxy, 1.2 by 0.6 with an average surface brightness of 12.6 and a position angle of 0. Through a 17.5 in 1991, he called it faint, fairly small, oval, 2 to 1 north-south, very small, brighter nucleus, which is kind of strange because you would have expected him to maybe mention this brighter star right here. Well, maybe we've got the wrong candidate, but I don't think so. Everything's been turning up right about here in the field. So let us go ahead and do our typical zoom in. And now as we approach 100%, you're seeing some extension. You're seeing the bright core, you're seeing some nebular extensions going off in the distance. There seems to be a bit more of an extension here. Let's assume this is the west and this is the north, so the northwest. Not a bad view. Let's back it out until we concentrate the light best. Yeah, that's a fairly decent view. Another several galaxies on the field as well, but we already know that Lynx likes her galaxies. Once again, we're off to an NGC galaxy, NGC 2518. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't turn up in Lynx. I have to switch the page. However, I have printed notes about the data associated with these galaxies. This is at 8 hours, 7 minutes, 20.1 seconds, 51 degrees, 7 minutes, and 53 seconds. That pretty much just says we're in lengths. This is a magnitude visual 13.0 with a size of 1.2 by 1 arc minute, an average surface brightness of 13.1, and a position angle of 35 degrees. A 17.5-inch scope in 1991. Once again, it was a busy night, I'm sure. Fairly faint, small, slightly elongated with a bright core and faint stellar nucleus. And the way Steve describes things is about as good as you can get from the point of view of visual observation. We, of course, have the benefit of maybe a little larger aperture. You can see a very bright stellar core with acting as the nucleation for a rather football-shaped aura around it. That would be the core extension and probably the beginnings of the spiral arms. This is probably another galaxy with several spiral arms and not just two. So we'll have to look and see what class it is later on as we do more research during the publication of this video. I have to say it takes several hours, maybe 5 or 6, to really go through the video and do the research and add the commentary, and I really enjoy doing it. But it does mean that I spend a little less time on music. So, however, they do fuse nicely together because I put them as the background to these imaging sessions. From 2518 to 2519 wasn't much of a hop. This very bright star that was located here, probably around the 6th or 7th magnitude, just leaped up maybe 5 arc minutes. We're looking for NGC 2519, and I'll give you the data on it. It was not found. NGC 2519 is supposed to be 8 hours, 7 minutes, 58.9 seconds, plus 51 degrees, 7 minutes, and 42 seconds, putting it once again in lengths, but was not visible to Steve, apparently, Gottlieb. However, I do believe there's a very faint galaxy here, but who would have ever discovered that, I don't know. I would say this is probably, but the star leaped up about that much, which means it should be somewhere in this region here. But you got to be aware of the fact that sometimes the data on right ascension and declination is inaccurate. So I'm going to drop back to 100%, and we can search the field a little bit. There are some faint fuzzies, but you know, as you gain sensitivity with scopes, I heard about a guy once who did a deep sky capture of about 50 minutes to an hour of the Pleiades and discovered 50 galaxies in the background to Messier 45. So yeah. Oh, it is starting to come out. This is probably a good candidate for NGC 2519. And I will do a little research on that tomorrow because this is a galaxy that is probably around magnitude 15.5. And it should give us some good data on the skylive.com, which I've noticed now has been coming up with a lot of advertisements. So apparently they need some additional funding to keep their servers going. And I do appreciate the fact they have them up at all. Hey, NGC 2521 is another galaxy in lengths, 8 hours, 8 minutes, 49.3 seconds with a declination of plus 57 degrees, 46 minutes, and 10 seconds. It's supposed to be magnitude 12.8, which should be quite obvious on the screen, but it's a little small, 1.2 by 0.7. Those are typically size of magnitude 13 galaxies, so it falls in there pretty good. With an average surface brightness of 12.6, and a position angle of 45 degrees. The position angle gives you an idea that there is some kind of elongation of this galaxy. Through a 17.5 scope in 1991. Now, a 17.5 pretty much is the lower end of what this scope is able to reveal, which is a 6-inch, 150 millimeter, using this current system of the ZWO detector. CCD imager at 10 seconds exposure. At this exposure time, I think we're a little closer to 24 inches than to 17.5, but Steve describes it as fairly faint, very small, round, bright core with a faint stellar nucleus. Now, I am kind of seeing something here, but we really don't quite make things out until we begin our zoom. So let's keep an eye on that. Oh yeah, there's our galaxy. Now, Steve is at the eyepiece able to operate at fairly high magnifications, typically in this range, 250x. And that really does bring out the galactic qualities. You can see the bright central core with a nucleus kind of around it. And there is a fainter outcropping of some luminosity that doesn't look very star-like right about there. So that is our view of looking at the handset to make sure I get it right. NGC25-2549. Right, we've escaped the cat's paw. We're now in Camela pardalis, the camel, rather than the cat. This is NGC 2523 in Camela pardalis, 8 hours, 15 minutes, and 2.2 seconds, but a declination now of 73 degrees, 34 minutes, and 44 seconds. This is a visual magnitude 11.9 and quite large, 3 by 1.8 arc minutes, and an average surface brightness of 13.6 with a position angle of 57 degrees. It has been observed through a 24-inch scope, which I do believe we are operating at this evening. But I have to boost him. He usually does it in a 24. Steve's usually observing at about 375x. We will go to 250. All right, here's obviously our galaxy now. I'm going to read what he says in a 24-inch scope. This was done, recently, on March 6th of 2021, and he used 260x on this occasion. He described it as fairly bright, certainly, moderately large, definitely, roundish central region, about 1 arc minute in size. Yes, there is a central region, but it looks like it's a little cigar-shaped. With a diffuse outer halo, 2 by 1 arc minutes, southwest to northeast. Yeah, that looks about the right position angle, and I would definitely say we are making out the diffuse outer halo. A prominent bar runs through the center in a west-northwest to east-southwest direction. And yes, we do see the bar. At the center is a small, brighter nucleus. Yes, there is something that looks somewhat stellar in there as well. And a magnitude 11.7 star is off the southwest end. All right, the southwest. Well, the west is to the right, I do believe, and the south is above. So there is that star, and it is magnitude 11.7, which is certainly brighter than the galaxy itself, which I believe I said was magnitude 11.9. Let me make sure that's 2523, yes. The galaxy itself, in total, very interesting, is magnitude 11.9, and the star is 2/10 of a magnitude brighter. A very nice look. I thought I'd give you one more look at that galaxy because much of its texture and display is visible at 50 to 70x. It depends on what this thing dropped down to. I've noticed the zoom function is variable. Usually it's 26%, now it's 32, so let's call this about 75x anyway. Well, we didn't spend much time on the camel's hump. We're back into links once again. For NGC 2534, 8 hours, 12 minutes, 54.1 seconds, plus 55 degrees, 40 minutes, 19 seconds, for a 12.9 visual magnitude galaxy of a size of 1.4 by 1.2 and an average surface brightness of 13.5. In 1991, once again through that 17.5 inch, probably a Dobsonian reflector, fairly faint, small, round, broadly concentrated halo with a faint stellar nucleus. So, not sure we can pick out this has got spikes on it, so it's probably a star, this particular galaxy at 70x. So we will do our zoomy thing, and we will discover that is the galaxy that Steve is referring to. Let's see if we get up to 100. Yeah, there we go. That makes it very clear that we're looking at a galaxy. He said, excuse me, small, round, brightly concentrated halo, faint stellar nucleus. All of that falls in pretty good, except we're seeing some extensions to the south above and the north below that he did not mention. Okay, we're going to go on now to NGC2537, also known as the Bear Paw Galaxy. Huh. If it's got a description like that, it's got to have a pretty good look to it. Once again, I'd like to point out that after several passes, stacks, what was the galaxy we observed became more noticeable once again at a lower magnification, the initial magnification. Just something to note. We did not see it in the first pass. It took a couple of stacks before it became readily apparent at the lowest magnification. Well, I think the Bear Paw Galaxy is pretty easily picked out. NGC 2537 is at 8 hours, 13 minutes, 14.5 seconds with a declination of 45 degrees, 59 minutes, and 31 seconds, once again in lengths. The visual magnitude is 11.7 with a size of 1.7 by 1.5, so a bit small, but reasonable. Surface brightness is 12.6 through a 13.1 scope in 1984. Fairly faint, small, round with no structure. Well, we're seeing structure definitely here at about 70x. And if we go ahead and zoom in, yeah, it does look like somebody left the print. So I'm going to go ahead and center it up a little bit and give you folks a chance to look at it. And I may even play with the histogram just a little bit to see if we can't enhance the texture of the galaxy. All right, you can see there's something that does look like the paw. The palm beginning here and a paw going off in these directions. That is a fairly decent view, and I'm going to go ahead and run the magnification up seriously. And let us take a look at this while I do some research on the next view. Now notice, what we're really losing here at these super high magnifications is we're getting all kinds of pixelation. This ZWO imager does have an internal cooling system, and for some reason I managed not to turn it on, but it's pretty cold today, so I have to conclude that some of this pixelation would disappear if I had actually turned on the cooler. It takes a while, and then it puts a check next to the cooler function when it achieves temperature. But anyway, there's a lot to all this, and the big issue of the night was having to do several passes using different stars in order to finally get a 3-star alignment that would actually reveal Bode's galaxies as expected. So there's our low-power view of the Bear Paw Galaxy, very aptly named. Okay, picking this galaxy out on the screen, even at 70x, is quite obvious. And there's a reason for that. This is NGC 2541 at 8 hours, 14 minutes, 40.2 seconds, and plus 49 degrees, 3 minutes, and 43 seconds. The galaxy is located in Lynx. Now take a moment and look at it and ask yourself some questions. Does it have a stellar-looking core? And I would agree that it does. However, the core doesn't really seem to blend evenly out of the core region, but there is a very expansive aura of stellar development and nebulosity around that core. Looks to me like there's a little more development in the direction of the west, which is over here, than it is to the east. And we're going to get a better sense of that as we zoom in. However, since the galaxy is so um, nebulous and lacks distinct features, unlike that bear claw. We really don't seem to be able to use a lot of magnification on it, and that's probably the best view right there. What was that? 50%. All right, let me give you Steve's discussion of that. NGC 2541 is at 8 hours 14 minutes 40.2 seconds with a declination of 490343. Visual magnitude is 11.8, but its light is seriously spread out, 6.3 by 3.2 arc minutes. Therefore, it's about a 2-to-1 oblately presented galaxy with an average surface brightness of 14.9. But given that central core region is not particularly bright, it itself, the core region, is probably somewhere around magnitude 13. The galaxy has a position angle of 165 degrees. Through a 13.1-inch scope on February 23, 1985, faint, fairly large, very diffuse halo. Okay, it's got a diffuse halo. Elongated north-northwest to south-southeast with a weak concentration to an elongated core. Yep, weak concentration to an elongated core. Through a 13.1-inch scope, that is a pretty good observation. I'm not sure what magnification he may have been using at the time, but that's a fairly good description of NGC 2541. Hey, we're up once again into Camula Pardalis. We're at NGC 2544 with 8 hours, 21 minutes, 40.3 seconds, with a northerly declination of 73 degrees, 59 minutes, and 16 seconds. This is a magnitude 12.9 galaxy, at size 1.1 by 0.8 arc minutes, and an average surface brightness a little brighter than the galaxy itself, 12.5. Position angle is 70 degrees. Through a 17.5-inch scope on December 23, 1992, Steve describes it as fairly faint, fairly small, elongated 3-to-1 west-northwest to east-northeast. A brighter core is located 5.5 arc minutes southwest of a magnitude 9.5 star. Now, I am seeing a galaxy down here that's brighter, but I do believe we should be looking in this region of the screen. Now, there is a galaxy located here as well. I would expect to see it here, but there's an elongate at this position as well. So we are seeing several stars on this field, and oftentimes the one we're looking for does not come out until we zoom. Do use the e-zoom function. Well, for some reason I'm expecting the galaxy to be here, but this looks like our star, and this appears to be our galaxy. NGC 2544. It's got a brighter core, and it's located about 5.5 arc minutes, but it describes it, oh yeah, southwest. So yes, this is definitely southwest of the star here. So that is a pretty good view of NGC 2544. We're now almost to a half an hour into this section of the video, and I did an earlier 3 or 4 minutes, so we're running a bit long. Let's have our last view of the night and then go back to Bode's galaxies to see what they would look like. Oh, this is a very exciting looking galaxy right here. Quite small, but with some very nice features and quite edge on. I'm hoping that is our study. That would be NGC 2549. It's located in Lynx at 8 hours, 18 minutes, 58.2 seconds with a declination of 57 degrees, 48 minutes, and 11 seconds. Give me a moment to flip a page to determine what has to be said about it. Yes, its visual magnitude 11.2 with a size 3.9 by 1.3 arc minute, and that would explain the 3-to-1 aspect ratio, giving it kind of an edgy looking appearance. Average surface brightness is 12.8 with a position angle of 177 degrees. That pretty much confirms it. It goes left and right. Through a 13.1-inch scope in 1985, it was fairly bright, fairly small, edge on 4-to-1 north-south, 2 by 0.5 arc minutes in size. very bright core, stellar or almost stellar nucleus located 10 minutes west-northwest of a magnitude 5.9, 30 Lynxes. There we go for our views. And this is a pretty exciting galaxy. Let's do our zoomer thing and then center it up. And you know what might be fun to do on this one, even though we're running long, it would be to do a 30-second exposure. So I'm going to do that now. Well, here is our 30-second exposure of NGC2549, that really tight little edge-on galaxy we previously imaged, increasing it by a factor of 3, basically somewhere between, it's about adding about 2/3 to the aperture of the scope. So that is quite a nice view. Bit of pixelation there. I did have to adjust the histogram to get this kind of a view with the stars. The focus looks pretty good. We are operating at 100% zoom right now, and the stars do not look too bulbous. So there we have it for this evening. Let's run over and have a look at Bode's galaxies at 30-second exposure time. By the way, we are now at -10 degrees centigrade on the ZWO imager. All right, folks, we're going to go out on Bode's galaxies this evening. 30-second exposure. I had to reset the histogram settings to give the best view. We're definitely seeing a good deal of texture in Messier 82 and some nice spiralicity to Messier 81 and a very fine night of viewing. I'm going to expand this out a little bit, and as you can see through magnification, we expose more pixels to display on the screen. We get a little better view of textures. Look at this luminosity forming right here in this part of Messier 81. So what I'm going to say is the usual. Carpe Noctem, and if Denisa is watching tonight, along with her beau, I hope you've enjoyed your time here, supporting the views from Backyard John Day, and I hope your travels go well for you. All right, Alejandro, adios, and carpe.